The first gunshot made Olivia Parker duck for cover, but it was the second one that truly changed her life. Dust motes danced in the fading rays of sunlight that filtered through the grimy windows of the Dry Gulch Saloon as she pressed herself against the rough wooden wall, heart hammering in her chest. It was 1878 in the unforgiving territory of Arizona, and she had made the grave mistake of traveling alone. Olivia had arrived in town only hours ago, seeking her brother who had ventured west months earlier. The coach had deposited her unceremoniously at the edge of town with her single trunk, the driver pointing her toward the only establishment that might provide information about newcomers, the saloon. Her proper Eastern upbringing had made her hesitate at the threshold, but desperation had finally pushed her through those swinging doors. Now, as the third shot exploded from the barrel of a drunken miner's revolver, she regretted her decision entirely. "Look what we got here, boys." The slurred voice came from a hulking man with a matted beard and eyes that gleamed with dangerous intent. A proper lady all alone in our establishment. The saloon had grown quieter, the piano player's fingers stilling on the yellowed keys. Several patrons edged away, wanting no part of whatever was about to unfold. Others leaned forward, eager for entertainment. "I'm simply seeking information about my brother," Olivia said, attempting to keep her voice steady. "Then I'll be on my way." "Oh, I don't think so," the bearded man drawled, approaching her with unsteady steps. Two equally inebriated companions flanked him, cutting off her path to the door. "Pretty thing like you shouldn't be in such a hurry." Olivia's back pressed harder against the wall as the men advanced. Her gloved hand clutched her reticule where she kept the small derringer her father had insisted she bring. She had never fired it outside of his careful instruction, and prayed she wouldn't need to now. "I said I'm leaving," she repeated with more conviction than she felt. The bearded man reached for her arm, his alcohol-soaked breath making her turn her face away. "You ain't going nowhere, darlin'. That's enough." The voice cut through the tension like a knife, low, steady, and carrying the unmistakable promise of consequence. "She's leaving with me." The crowd parted as a tall figure moved toward them. Olivia could only make out his silhouette, at first broad-shouldered and topped with a wide-brimmed hat. As he drew closer, the last rays of sunlight illuminated features that seemed carved from the harsh landscape itself, strong jaw dusted with stubble, eyes the color of a stormy sky, and a mouth set in a grim line. The bearded man turned, swaying slightly. "Mind your own business, Sullivan. This ain't your concern." "I'm making it my concern, Haggerty." The newcomer's hand rested casually on the holstered revolver at his hip, but there was nothing casual about his stance. Every line of his body communicated readiness. "The lady clearly doesn't want your company." Olivia watched as the drunk measured the man called Sullivan, weighing his odds. Even in his intoxicated state, something about the newcomer's calm demeanor seemed to register as dangerous. "Didn't know she was spoken for," Haggerty finally muttered, taking an unsteady step back. Sullivan didn't correct the assumption. Instead, he extended his hand toward Olivia without taking his eyes off the three men. "Madam." She hesitated only a moment before accepting his offered assistance. His hand was warm and calloused, closing around hers with reassuring strength. "My apologies for the disturbance," he said to her, his voice softer now but still carrying enough for the onlookers to hear. "Let me escort you to safer accommodations." Without waiting for a response, he guided her toward the door, positioning himself between her and the drunken men. The saloon remained unnaturally quiet as they made their exit, the swinging doors creaking as they passed through. Outside, the evening air felt cool against Olivia's flushed cheeks. She withdrew her hand from her rescuer's grasp once they were safely on the boardwalk, smoothing her travel-wrinkled skirts with nervous fingers. "Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Your intervention was most timely." She straightened her spine, attempting to regain her composure. He studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Samuel Daniels, madam. Sullivan's what they call me around these parts. And you are Olivia Parker. I've just arrived from Boston looking for my brother Robert. He wrote that he had found work in this town, but I haven't heard from him in nearly 2 months." Samuel's expression revealed nothing, but something flickered in his eyes. "Parker, the mining company clerk," hope surged through Olivia. "Yes. Do you know where I might find him?" "I do." He glanced back at the saloon, then down the dusty Main Street. "But this isn't the place to discuss it. You need proper lodging first. There's a boarding house run by a respectable widow at the end of town. Mrs. Fletcher takes in female boarders." He gestured to her trunk, still sitting where the stagecoach had left it. "May I?" When she nodded, he hefted it easily onto one broad shoulder, then offered his free arm. "It's not far, Miss Parker." As they walked down the main street, Olivia felt the stares of townsfolk and knew her reputation was already compromised simply by being seen with this man. In Boston, she would have refused his escort, but here in this dusty frontier town, she recognized that propriety took different forms. "Are you the town sheriff, Mr. Daniels?" she asked, noting the way people nodded respectfully or stepped aside as they approached. A brief smile touched his lips. "No, madam, just a rancher. I have land about 5 miles outside of town. Yet those men seemed quite wary of you." "A reputation is easy to earn out here and hard to shake." He didn't elaborate further, and something in his tone discouraged her from pressing. They arrived at a neat white clapboard house with green shutters, a stark contrast to the unpainted buildings that dominated the rest of the street. Samuel set down her trunk and knocked firmly on the door. A plump woman with gray-streaked hair opened it, her suspicious expression melting into welcome when she saw who stood on her porch. "Sullivan, what brings you to my door at supper time?" "Mrs. Fletcher, this is Miss Olivia Parker. She needs proper lodging while in town." The woman's shrewd eyes assessed Olivia quickly. "Boston, by the look of those clothes. Come in, dear. You must be exhausted." Olivia turned to thank her rescuer, but his attention had shifted to something down the street. His jaw tightened, and she followed his gaze to see the 3 drunken men from the saloon stumbling onto the boardwalk, still watching them. "Mr. Daniels, I'll call on you tomorrow morning, Miss Parker," he interrupted, his voice pitched low. "We can discuss your brother then." "Is something wrong?" She couldn't help but notice how his posture had changed, tension coiling in his shoulders. "Nothing for you to worry about," he replied, tipping his hat. "Get some rest. This town looks different in the morning light." With that cryptic statement, he nodded to Mrs. Fletcher and strode back toward the saloon, his long legs eating up the distance with purposeful strides. Olivia watched him go, a strange mix of gratitude and unease settling in her stomach. "Come inside, dear," Mrs. Fletcher urged, ushering her through the door. "Whatever Sullivan rescued you from, you're safe now. That man might look dangerous, but he's got a code stronger than law in these parts." As the door closed behind her, Olivia wondered what exactly that code entailed, and why the mention of her brother's name had caused that flicker of recognition in Samuel Daniels' storm-colored eyes. The morning brought clarity with its harsh sunlight, illuminating the frontier town of Dry Gulch in unforgiving detail. Olivia rose early, having slept fitfully on the unfamiliar bed in Mrs. Fletcher's spare room. The landlady had been kind but sparse with information, saying only that Samuel Sullivan Daniels was respected despite keeping to himself, and that if he had promised to return, he would. After washing her face in the basin of cool water and changing into her second-best traveling dress, a practical navy blue that wouldn't show the dust quite so badly, Olivia made her way downstairs. Mrs. Fletcher was already bustling about the kitchen, the smell of coffee and frying bacon filling the small house. "There you are, Miss Parker. Sit and have some breakfast. You look like you could use a hearty meal after your journey." Olivia smiled gratefully, taking a seat at the kitchen table. "Thank you. You've been most kind." "Nonsense. It's not often we get visitors from the East who actually plan to stay more than a night." Mrs. Fletcher placed a steaming plate before her. "Most just pass through on their way to California looking for better prospects." "I'm not certain how long I'll be staying," Olivia admitted, taking a sip of the strong coffee. "It depends on my brother's situation." Mrs. Fletcher paused in her movements, a shadow crossing her round face. "Your brother? That would be Robert Parker." "Yes. Do you know him?" The older woman seemed to choose her words carefully. "Not well. He took a room at Grady's boarding house when he first arrived. That's where the single men usually stay, kept to himself, but paid promptly." She turned back to the stove, her shoulders tense. "Sullivan will tell you more, I expect." Before Olivia could press further, a knock sounded at the front door. Mrs. Fletcher bustled to answer it, and moments later, Samuel Daniels stepped into the kitchen, removing his hat as he entered. Sunlight from the window caught in his dark hair, revealing threads of copper Olivia hadn't noticed the night before. "Morning, madam," he said, nodding to her. "I trust you slept well." "Well enough, thank you." She studied him in the daylight, noting how different he appeared from the previous evening. His clothes were clean if worn dark trousers, a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms, and a leather vest. The revolver still hung at his hip, but it seemed more a tool than a threat in the morning light. "I've come to take you to your brother, if you're ready." Mrs. Fletcher made a small sound, quickly masked by the clatter of dishes as she moved them to the sink. Olivia didn't miss the significant look that passed between her and Samuel. "I am," Olivia said, rising from her seat. "Though I sense there's something you're not telling me, Mr. Daniels." His expression remained neutral, but his eyes definitely gray. She could now see held a hint of respect at her directness. "It's a bit of a ride. I have a buggy waiting outside." Olivia gathered her shawl and reticule, nodding her thanks to Mrs. Fletcher. "I'll return for supper, if that's acceptable." "Of course, dear," the landlady replied, though something in her voice suggested she wasn't certain that would happen. The streets of Dry Gulch were already active with morning business shopkeepers sweeping boardwalks, a wagon unloading supplies at the general store, and women hurrying on morning errands. Several people greeted Samuel with respectful nods, eyeing Olivia with undisguised curiosity. A small, well-kept buggy waited outside, hitched to a handsome bay gelding. Samuel helped her up, his hands strong and steady at her waist, before climbing up beside her. The seat wasn't wide, and the press of his shoulder against hers was unavoidable. In Boston, such proximity to a strange man would have been scandalous, but Olivia found herself more concerned with what lay ahead than with propriety. They traveled in silence for several minutes, leaving the town behind and following a winding dirt road that climbed gently into scrubby hills. Finally, unable to bear the suspense any longer, Olivia turned to face him. "Mr. Daniels, I appreciate your assistance, but I must insist you tell me where we're going and what has happened to my brother." He slowed the horse, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "Miss Parker, I'm taking you to see Robert, but I need to prepare you." He hesitated, seeming to search for the right words. "Your brother was involved in an incident at the mining company 2 weeks ago. There was an accusation of theft, a dispute, and he was shot." The world seemed to tilt beneath Olivia. Shot, is he? She couldn't finish the question. He's alive, Samuel assured her quickly. But he's been recovering at my ranch. The doctor in town isn't discreet, and there are those who would have seen your brother hanged rather than given a chance to heal. I don't understand. Robert would never steal. There must be some mistake. I believe there is. That's why I offered him sanctuary when I found him wounded on the trail leading out of town. He'd managed to get on his horse but collapsed not far from my property. Olivia's mind raced, trying to make sense of this information. Why would you help a man accused of theft? You don't know him or me. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. I know what it's like to be judged without a fair hearing, and I recognized the setup for what it was. Setup? The word felt foreign on her tongue. He clicked to the horse, urging it to a faster pace. The mining company has been pushing smaller claim holders out, buying up properties for less than they're worth. Your brother discovered discrepancies in their accounting payments that didn't match the recorded values of ore. He was going to report it to the territorial authorities. So they framed him for theft, Olivia concluded, anger rising through her shock, and tried to kill him to silence him. That's my belief, but proving it without the documentation he was carrying when he was shot. Samuel shook his head. It disappeared with the man who did the shooting. Who was that man? Has he been arrested? A muscle tightened in Samuel's jaw. Clyde Haggerty, brother to the drunk who was bothering you last night. The connection clicked into place. That's why those men recognized you, why they backed down. Clyde hasn't been seen since that day. His brother Emmett believes I had something to do with his disappearance, but can't prove it. Your arrival in town searching for Robert has stirred things up again. They crested a hill, and a small valley opened before them. In its center sat a modest ranch house with several outbuildings, a corral with horses, and a small herd of cattle grazing in a nearby meadow. It was beautiful in a rugged way, the kind of place that required constant work but rewarded it with independence. "This is your home?" Olivia asked, momentarily distracted from her worries. Something like pride crossed Samuel's face. "Built it myself. 5 years of hard work. It's lovely." They fell silent as he guided the buggy down to the ranch. As they approached, the door to the main house opened, and a tall figure leaned heavily on a cane, shading his eyes against the morning sun. "Robert!" Olivia cried, recognizing her brother despite his gaunt appearance. Before Samuel could help her down, she was already scrambling from the buggy, lifting her skirts to run the remaining distance. Her brother's face registered shock, then joy as she threw her arms around him, mindful of his obvious weakness. "Livy." "How in the world I came looking for you when your letter stopped," she explained, drawing back to examine him. He was pale, thinner than she remembered, with new lines of pain etched around his eyes and mouth. "Oh, Robert, what have they done to you?" "It's not as bad as it looks," he assured her, though his grip on the cane suggested otherwise. "Sullivan's been keeping me alive and hidden while I heal." Samuel approached, leading the horse and buggy toward a small barn. "Your sister deserves the full story, Parker. And we should get you back inside before you fall over." Robert nodded, allowing Olivia to help support him as they made their way back into the house. The interior was simple, but clean, a main room with a stone fireplace, rough-hewn furniture that showed skilled craftsmanship, and shelves lined with more books than she would have expected. 2 doors led to what she presumed were bedrooms, and a third to a small kitchen. "Sullivan lives like a monk out here," Robert commented as he lowered himself carefully into a chair by the fire. "But he's a better cook than you'd expect, and he doesn't ask too many questions." "I ask plenty," Samuel corrected, entering behind them and removing his hat. "Just not the ones you don't want to answer." He moved to the kitchen, returning moments later with a pot of coffee and 3 cups. As he poured, Olivia took the opportunity to observe the interaction between the two men. There was an ease between them that spoke of forced proximity over the past weeks, but also a genuine respect. "How bad is your injury?" she asked Robert once they were all settled. "Bullet went through my side. Missed anything vital, but I lost a lot of blood. Fever nearly took me the first week." He glanced at Samuel. "If Sullivan hadn't found me when he did." "You were lucky," Samuel said simply. "But luck won't keep you safe now that the Haggertys know your sister is in town looking for you. We need to decide what happens next." Robert's expression darkened. "I still have friends at the territorial office in Tucson. If I could get there with what I remember of those ledgers." "You're in no condition to travel that far," Olivia protested. "And if these people are willing to kill to keep their secret, they are," Samuel confirmed. "The mining company has powerful investors who wouldn't take kindly to a scandal, men who can make problems disappear." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications settled around them. Olivia's mind worked furiously, trying to find a way through this tangle of danger. "The ledgers," she said suddenly. "You said they disappeared with this Clyde person." Samuel nodded. "He took Robert's saddlebags when he left him for dead. But if Clyde hasn't been seen since that day, where would he go? Surely not back to the mining company. They'd have no reason to keep him alive once he'd done their dirty work." Robert straightened in his chair, wincing at the movement. "Livy's right. Clyde was a hired gun, not a company man. He wouldn't have any loyalty to them." "Which means he might still have the ledgers," Samuel concluded, his eyes narrowing in thought. "Possibly keeping them as insurance against his employers. Or he's dead and they have them back," Robert countered grimly. Olivia looked between the two men, a plan forming. "If I were to inquire at the mining office about my brother and innocent sister concerned about his whereabouts?" "No," both men said simultaneously. "It's too dangerous," Samuel continued. "The Haggertys have already shown interest in you. If the company realizes you're connected to Robert, you'd be at risk. But they don't know I'm aware of any of this," she insisted. "To them, I would just be a worried sister from back east, properly ignorant of frontier business." Robert shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not, Olivia. I didn't survive being shot just to put you in danger." "Then what do you suggest? Hiding here until you're well enough to travel? How long will that take? And what if they come looking here?" Samuel set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. "She has a point, Parker. We're running out of options and time." "So you'd risk my sister's life?" Robert demanded, color rising in his pale cheeks. "I'd never suggest anything that would put her in real danger," Samuel replied evenly. "But a carefully managed appearance in town with me nearby. It might give us the information we need." Olivia leaned forward. "What are you thinking, Mr. Daniels?" His gray eyes met hers, serious but with a spark of something that might have been admiration. "A strategy that uses their assumptions against them. But it would require your complete trust, Miss Parker. You've saved my brother's life and protected me from those drunks. I believe you've earned some measure of trust." Samuel nodded, then outlined his plan. As Olivia listened, she felt a mix of apprehension and determination. It was dangerous, yes, but also possibly their only chance to clear Robert's name and ensure their safety. By the time Samuel finished speaking, the morning had given way to afternoon, and a decision had been reached. Despite Robert's continued objections, they would put their plan into action the following day. "You'll stay here tonight," Samuel told Olivia. "It's safer than returning to town. I'll ride in and let Mrs. Fletcher know you're with your brother. Where will you sleep?" she asked, suddenly aware that the small house had limited accommodations. A faint smile touched his lips. I've got a bedroll in the barn. It won't be the first time I've used it." As Samuel rose to tend to his ranch chores, leaving the siblings to catch up, Olivia found herself watching him through the window as he moved about the property. There was an efficiency to his movements, a capability that inspired confidence. Yet there was gentleness too, evident in how he handled his animals and in the home he'd created in this wild place. "He's a good man," Robert said quietly, observing her observation. "Not what I expected when I first saw him standing over me with a gun." Olivia turned back to her brother. "Who is he, really? Everyone in town seems to both respect and fear him." Robert shifted in his chair, seeking a more comfortable position for his healing wound. "From what I've gathered during our conversations, he came west after the war fought for the Union. Had some trouble with the law in Missouri over a disputed killing, headed further west to start fresh. Been here about 5 years. A killer." Olivia couldn't reconcile that with the man who had treated her with such respect. "A survivor," Robert corrected. "Out here, there's a difference between a man who kills because he has to and one who kills because he wants to. Sullivan is the former." Olivia considered this as she helped Robert to his bedroom so he could rest. As she settled into the quiet afternoon at the ranch, watching the sun make its arc across the vast sky, she wondered what tomorrow would bring and whether Samuel Daniels' plan would save them or lead them into greater danger. The weight of the derringer in her reticule seemed heavier now, a reminder that in this wild territory, survival sometimes required crossing lines that proper Boston society would never acknowledge existed. Dawn broke with a symphony of colors across the eastern sky, painting the desert landscape in hues of gold and pink that took Olivia's breath away. She had risen early, unable to sleep, as the day's dangerous plan loomed before her. Standing on the small porch of Samuel's ranch house, she watched as the man himself emerged from the barn, already dressed and ready for the day's work. He paused when he saw her, then approached with measured steps. "You're up early, Miss Parker." "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Too many thoughts circling," he nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Having second thoughts?" "No," she replied firmly. "Nervous, but committed." Samuel studied her for a moment, then gestured toward the corral where several horses watched them with interest. "Would you like to meet the rest of the ranch while we wait for your brother to wake?" The simple offer of distraction was exactly what she needed. "I would, thank you." They walked together in the growing light, and Samuel introduced her to each horse by name, explaining their temperaments and histories. His voice changed when he spoke of them, softening, filled with a quiet pride. These animals were not merely property to him, but partners in his solitary life. "And this," he said, approaching a beautiful Palomino mare who nickered at his approach, "is Sunny. She's the one you'll be riding today." Olivia reached out tentatively to stroke the mare's velvety nose. "She's lovely. Gentle but sure-footed. I thought she'd suit you." "I haven't ridden since I was a girl," Olivia confessed. "And never astride." Samuel's expression revealed nothing, but she sensed his recalculation. "The buggy would be more proper but less practical for what we're planning. I can teach you the basics before we leave." An hour later, Olivia found herself dressed in a borrowed pair of Robert's trousers, rolled up significantly and cinched tightly at the waist, with her skirt packed away for later use. The sensation of sitting astride was strange but not uncomfortable, and under Samuel's patient instruction, she quickly reacquainted herself with the fundamentals of horsemanship. "You're a natural," he commented as she guided Sunny in a small circle around the corral. "Or perhaps just a quick study," she countered, unable to suppress a smile at his praise. Robert appeared on the porch, leaning heavily on his cane, his face a mask of concern. "Are you sure about this, Livy? There's still time to reconsider. She guided the horse toward him. I'm sure. We need those ledgers to clear your name, and this plan has the best chance of success. The plan was simple in concept, though fraught with risk. Olivia would return to town properly dressed as a lady, ostensibly still searching for her brother. Samuel would escort her to the mining company office, where she would inquire about Robert's employment and whereabouts, playing the role of the worried sister, unaware of any wrongdoing. Their hope was that her presence might provoke a reaction, perhaps loose talk about Clyde Haggerty or the missing ledgers that would give them direction. By mid-morning, they were ready to depart. Olivia had changed back into her dress, though she kept Robert's trousers and a shirt in her saddlebag in case they needed to make a quick escape cross-country. Samuel had cleaned his revolver and checked it carefully before holstering it, a grim reminder of the potential danger. "Remember," Samuel instructed as they prepared to mount up, "stay within my sight at all times. If anything feels wrong, use our signal and I'll get you out immediately." The signal was a simple one, removing the pin from her hat. Samuel would be watching for it while pretending to conduct business nearby. Robert embraced her tightly. "Be careful, Livy. No heroics." "I'll bring her back safely," Samuel promised, the gravity in his voice leaving no room for doubt. The ride to town was largely silent, each lost in their own thoughts as they prepared for the roles they would play. When the buildings of Dry Gulch came into view, Samuel directed them to a small grove of cottonwoods just outside town. "We'll leave the horses here," he said. "It's better if we're seen arriving on foot, as though we've just come from Mrs. Fletcher's." Olivia nodded, smoothing her skirts after dismounting and checking that her hat was secured with its significant pin. "How do I look? Suitably worried and proper?" Samuel's gaze traveled over her face, lingering for a moment longer than strictly necessary. "You look convincing." Something in his tone made her chest tighten inexplicably. They walked the remaining distance to town, adjusting their stride to appear as though they were coming from the boarding house. Samuel offered his arm, and Olivia took it, acutely aware of the strength beneath her fingertips. "Remember, you're simply a concerned sister looking for information," he murmured as they approached the main street. "I'm a local rancher who's kindly offered to help you navigate town. And you'll be where? Close enough to intervene if needed, far enough not to arouse suspicion." His voice dropped lower. "Trust your instincts, Miss Parker. If anything feels wrong, I remove my hat pin," she finished. "I understand." The mining company office was a substantial building on the main street, its fresh paint and large windows declaring its prosperity in contrast to the more weathered structures surrounding it. A sign proclaimed it the headquarters of the Dry Gulch Silver and Mining Company. Samuel escorted her to the door, tipping his hat. "I'll meet you at the general store in half an hour, Miss Parker. Good luck with your inquiries." With that, he strode away, though Olivia noticed he didn't go far, just to the gunsmith shop across the street, where he could maintain a clear view of the mining office. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door and stepped into her role. The interior of the office was surprisingly luxurious for a frontier town. Polished wooden counters, a clerk in a clean shirt and tie, and an air of Eastern business practices transported west. A large man with an impressive mustache looked up from a desk at the back, his eyes narrowing slightly as he assessed the newcomer. "May I help you, madam?" the clerk inquired politely. "I hope so," Olivia replied, injecting her voice with just the right amount of worry and refinement. "My name is Olivia Parker. I'm trying to locate my brother, Robert Parker. I believe he was employed here as a clerk." The silence that followed was brief but telling. The large man at the back desk rose slowly, adjusting his waistcoat as he approached. "Miss Parker, what a pleasant surprise. I'm Harold Whitcomb, manager of this operation." His smile didn't reach his cold eyes. "I'm afraid we've been concerned about your brother as well. He failed to report to work some weeks ago without explanation." Olivia pressed a gloved hand to her heart, her expression carefully dismayed. How distressing. His last letter mentioned how pleased he was with his position here. Did he give any indication of his plans? Whitcomb exchanged a quick glance with the clerk. "None whatsoever, though I must say there were irregularities discovered after his departure." "Irregularities?" She allowed her voice to waver slightly. "What do you mean? I dislike speaking ill of family matters, but as his sister, perhaps you should know." Whitcomb lowered his voice confidentially. "There were discrepancies in our accounts, money missing. We had hoped to speak with Robert about them, but he vanished before we could do so." Olivia's shock wasn't entirely feigned. The audacity of this man to lie so blatantly to her face. "Are you suggesting my brother stole from you, Mr. Whitcomb?" "The evidence certainly points that way, miss. We've been discreet, out of respect for your brother's reputation, but the sheriff has been informed." Through the large front window, Olivia could see Samuel in conversation with the gunsmith, though his attention periodically shifted toward the mining office. She needed to keep Whitcomb talking. "This is most upsetting," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Did anyone see my brother leave town? Perhaps he mentioned traveling somewhere." Whitcomb's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "There was a man, one of our security contractors, who reported seeing him ride out toward Tucson. Fellow named Haggerty. Unfortunately, he's also gone missing, which has complicated our investigation." "Missing? How strange that both would disappear so suddenly." The office door opened, admitting a powerfully built man whose resemblance to the drunk from the saloon was unmistakable. Emmett Haggerty. His eyes widened slightly upon seeing Olivia. "Well now, if it ain't the lady from the saloon," he drawled, removing his hat. "Found your way to the right place after all. You know Miss Parker?" Whitcomb asked sharply. "Met her when she first came to town. Me and the boys was just being friendly, but that meddling rancher Sullivan stepped in." Haggerty's tone suggested that friendly had been anything but. Whitcomb's gaze sharpened, darting between Haggerty and Olivia. "Sullivan Daniels. You've made his acquaintance, Miss Parker." Something in his tone put Olivia on alert. "Mr. Daniels kindly showed me to proper lodging when I arrived. He's been helping me inquire about my brother." "Has he now?" Whitcomb's smile turned predatory. "And has Mr. Daniels shared any theories about your brother's disappearance?" Olivia realized she'd stepped into dangerous territory. These men were fishing for information about what Samuel might know or have told her. She forced her expression to remain innocent and confused, only that it was unusual for someone to leave employment without notice. "Why do you ask? Do you know Mr. Daniels?" Whitcomb's laugh held no humor. "Everyone knows Sullivan in these parts. Man has a certain reputation." He glanced at Haggerty. "Perhaps you should continue your search with the sheriff, Miss Parker. Emmett can escort you." It wasn't a suggestion. As Haggerty moved toward her, Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. This was rapidly becoming a trap. "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose," she said, backing toward the door. "I'm meeting Mr. Daniels at the general store shortly, and insist," Whitcomb interrupted smoothly. "We take the welfare of our employees' families very seriously. And I'd like to speak with Sullivan myself about any information he might have regarding your brother." Haggerty was now positioned between Olivia and the door, his bulk blocking her exit. Through the window, she could see Samuel still at the gunsmith's, unaware of the developing situation. She needed to signal him, but her hat pin was currently inaccessible without making her intentions obvious. "Actually," she improvised, "I'm feeling rather faint. The journey and this distressing news." She swayed slightly, reaching up to adjust her hat as though steadying herself. In the process, she deliberately loosened the pin. Whitcomb stepped forward with false concern. "Perhaps you should sit down, Miss Parker. We have a back room where you could rest." "No, thank you," she interrupted, continuing her performance as she removed the hat pin completely, ostensibly to secure a loose strand of hair. "I just need some air, if you'll excuse me." She moved toward the door again, but Haggerty made no effort to step aside. "Now, don't rush off, miss. We ain't finished our conversation about your brother." The hat pin clutched in her fingers, Olivia fought to maintain her composure. "Please step aside, Mr. Haggerty." "I don't think I will," he replied, his hand moving toward her arm. The office door burst open with such force that it slammed against the wall, the glass window within it cracking from the impact. Samuel filled the doorway, his expression thunderous as he assessed the scene in an instant. "Miss Parker," he said calmly, though nothing about his stance was calm, "I believe we have an appointment at the general store." "Sullivan," Whitcomb greeted with forced joviality. "What perfect timing! We were just discussing Robert Parker's unfortunate disappearance. Were you?" Samuel's gaze never left Haggerty, who had frozen with his hand inches from Olivia's arm. "Strange coincidence. I've been looking into that matter myself." The tension in the room was palpable, like the air before a lightning strike. Olivia could see the calculations happening behind each man's eyes, Whitcomb determining how much Samuel might know, Haggerty deciding whether to risk a confrontation, and Samuel measuring the threat to Olivia. "Step aside, Haggerty," Samuel said quietly. "Or what, Sullivan? You'll shoot me down like you did my brother." The accusation hung in the air. Olivia's gaze darted to Samuel, whose expression revealed nothing. "Your brother drew on an unarmed man," Samuel replied evenly. "What happened after that was his own doing." "Liar." Haggerty snarled, his hand dropping to his gun. "Emmett," Whitcomb snapped. "Not here." The warning came too late. Haggerty's hand closed around his revolver, but before he could clear leather, Samuel's gun was already drawn and leveled at his chest. "Don't," Samuel warned, his voice deadly quiet. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Haggerty raised his hands. "Miss Parker," Samuel said without taking his eyes off Haggerty, "please join me outside." Olivia didn't need to be told twice. She slipped past Haggerty, who glared at her with naked hatred, and hurried to Samuel's side. "This isn't over, Sullivan," Whitcomb called as they backed toward the door. "Interfering in company business is a dangerous habit." "So is trying to frame innocent men for theft," Samuel replied. "And shooting them when they discover your real books." Whitcomb's face drained of color. "You have no proof of such absurd claims." "Don't I?" Samuel's smile was cold. Clyde was many things, but clever enough to destroy evidence wasn't one of them. With that cryptic statement, Samuel guided Olivia out the door, keeping himself between her and the office as they moved swiftly down the boardwalk. "Walk naturally," he murmured, though his hand at her elbow steered her at a pace just short of running. "We need to get to the horses." "They know you have something to do with Clyde's disappearance," Olivia whispered, her heart pounding. "They suspect, but what matters now is that they know we know about the ledgers." His expression was grim. "Which means we need to leave town immediately." "But Mrs. Fletcher can't help us now. Whitcomb owns half the town, including the sheriff. We need to get back to your brother, and then all of you need to leave the territory until I can sort this out." They had reached the end of the main street when shots rang out behind them. Samuel pushed Olivia into the shelter of an alleyway as bullets splintered the wood of the building beside them. "Go," he ordered, drawing his revolver. "Through the alley, across the back lots to where we left the horses. I'll hold them here." "I won't leave you," she protested. His gray eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. "I'll be right behind you." "Go." Lifting her skirts, Olivia ran down the alleyway as more shots exploded behind her. She could hear shouting, the thunder of boots on wooden boardwalks, and then Samuel's gun returning fire. Fear for him nearly made her turn back, but she forced herself to keep moving. The best way to help was to reach the horses so they could escape together. She navigated the maze of back lots and outbuildings, grateful now for the mental map she'd made on their arrival. As she neared the edge of town, she heard hoofbeats behind her and spun around, ready to duck for cover. Samuel galloped toward her on his black stallion, leading Sonny by the reins. "Mount up," he called, bringing the horses to a sliding halt beside her. With more haste than grace, Olivia gathered her skirts and allowed Samuel to help her into the saddle. As soon as she was seated, he released Sonny's reins. "Ride hard for the ranch," he instructed. "Don't stop for anything." "You're not coming," panic edged her voice. "I'll be right behind you." "I need to lead them away from your trail first." He reached across the space between their horses and briefly squeezed her hand. "Trust me." Before she could protest, he wheeled his stallion around and galloped back toward town, firing a shot into the air that would undoubtedly draw attention. With a prayer for his safety, Olivia urged Sonny into a gallop, heading for the distant hills and the sanctuary of Samuel's ranch. She rode harder than she ever had in her life, the borrowed trousers beneath her skirt allowing her to push the mare to her limits. The desert landscape blurred around her as she followed the route they had taken earlier that morning, constantly checking over her shoulder for pursuit. There was none, which both relieved and worried her. Had Samuel successfully drawn their enemies away, or had something gone terribly wrong? When the ranch finally came into view, Olivia was nearly dizzy with exhaustion and fear. She galloped into the yard, calling for her brother. Robert emerged from the house, his face paling when he saw her alone. "Where's Sullivan?" he demanded as he helped her dismount from the sweating horse. "He led them away from me," she explained breathlessly. "They know, Robert. They know he has something to do with Clyde Haggerty, and they suspect he has the ledgers." Robert cursed, supporting her as her legs threatened to give way after the long ride. "Come inside. Tell me everything." Once inside, Olivia recounted the confrontation at the mining office while Robert listened grimly. When she finished, he sat heavily in his chair by the fire. "If they catch him." He didn't need to finish the thought. "We have to help him," Olivia insisted, already moving toward the door. "We can't just wait here. We don't even know where he is, Livy, and I can barely walk, let alone ride to his rescue." She paced the small room, her mind racing. "You said he found you on the trail. Where exactly?" "About 2 miles east of here, near a rock formation shaped like a thumb." Robert's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because that's where he found Clyde Haggerty's body, isn't it? And the ledgers." It wasn't really a question. The pieces had fallen into place during her desperate ride. Robert looked away, confirming her suspicion. "Sullivan never said so directly, but yes, I believe so. Clyde shot me and took my saddlebags with the ledgers, but he must have been wounded in the exchange. Sullivan found him dead or dying not far from where he found me. And he kept the ledgers as insurance," Olivia concluded. "Which means they might be hidden somewhere on this property." A new determination filled her. If she could find those ledgers, they would have leveraged proof of the mining company's corruption that could save both Robert and Samuel. "Help me search," she urged her brother. There must be a hiding place he would trust. For the next hour, they combed through the small ranch house, looking for any sign of hidden documents. They found nothing in the obvious places: no loose floorboards, No hollow books among his small library, nothing tucked behind the framed maps on his walls. "It's no use," Robert said finally, lowering himself back into his chair. "If Sullivan hid something, he did it too well for us to find." Olivia refused to give up. She stood in the center of the main room, trying to think like Samuel. Where would a man who lived alone, who trusted few people, hide something precious? Her gaze drifted to the stone fireplace, solid, permanent, the heart of the home. Walking over to it, she ran her fingers along the rough stones, noting how one section of the mortar looked slightly different from the rest. "Robert," she called softly, "come look at this." With effort, he joined her at the fireplace. "The mortar's fresher here," he observed. "Recently disturbed." Together, they carefully pried at the loose stones until one shifted. Behind it was a small cavity, and within it, a waterproof oilskin packet. Olivia withdrew it with trembling fingers, unwrapping it to reveal several sheets of paper covered in columns of figures, the missing ledgers. "This is it," Robert breathed, scanning the documents. "The evidence of their fraud. They've been reporting less silver than they've actually extracted, pocketing the difference and cheating their investors." The sound of approaching hoofbeats made them both freeze. Olivia hastily rewrapped the ledgers and thrust them into her brother's hands. "Hide these on your person," she instructed, helping him back to his chair. "I'll see who's coming." Cautiously approaching the window, she peered out, then sagged with relief. "It's Samuel." She rushed outside as he dismounted, his horse lathered and breathing hard. One look at his face told her everything. He was exhausted, grim, and there was blood staining his left sleeve. "You're hurt," she cried, hurrying to his side. "It's nothing," he dismissed, though he allowed her to support him as they walked to the house. "Just a graze. Did anyone follow you?" "No, and we found the ledgers, Samuel. We know what you did." He stopped, his body tensing. "What I did? You found Clyde after he shot Robert. You recovered the ledgers and hid them here." She met his gaze steadily. "You've been protecting both the evidence and my brother at great risk to yourself." Something in his expression softened. "Your brother needed help. The ledgers were insurance." "They're more than that now," Robert called from the doorway. "They're our way out of this mess." Inside, Olivia insisted on tending to Samuel's wound. A bullet had indeed grazed his upper arm, leaving a bloody furrow that made her wince in sympathy. As she cleaned and bandaged it, Robert explained their discovery and showed him the ledgers. "They'll be coming here next," Samuel warned, wincing as Olivia applied pressure to the wound. "Whitcomb won't stop until he has those ledgers and eliminates anyone who knows about them." "Then we need to leave," Olivia said firmly. "All of us. Tonight." Samuel shook his head. "Your brother can't ride that far in his condition." "I can make it to Tucson," Robert insisted, "especially if the alternative is a hanging." "And what about you?" Olivia asked Samuel. "This is your home." "Everything you've built." A shadow crossed his face as he looked around the small house. "Just wood and stone. Can be rebuilt." But Olivia could see what it cost him to say those words. This ranch represented years of hard work, his fresh start after whatever troubled past he'd left behind. Leaving it meant starting over yet again. "We'll need supplies," he said, already moving toward practicalities. "And to leave after dark. I led them on a false trail north, but it won't fool them for long." As twilight descended, they prepared for their escape. Samuel packed essentials while Olivia helped Robert dress for travel, including the hidden ledgers sewn into the lining of his coat. They would take the 3 best horses, Samuel's stallion, Sonny, and a sturdy gelding for Robert. "We'll head southeast," Samuel explained as they gathered in the main room for a hasty meal. "Avoid the main trails to Tucson. It'll add a day to our journey, but it's safer." Olivia noticed he kept checking the window, his movements increasingly tense as darkness fell completely. Finally, he moved to the door, his expression grim. "What is it?" she asked, joining him. He nodded toward the distant horizon. "Riders, still a few miles out, but coming this way." Olivia's heart sank. "How many? Can't tell yet, but we need to move now." He turned to Robert. "Are you ready?" Her brother nodded, determination overriding the pain evident in his face. "As I'll ever be." They doused the lamps, leaving the house in darkness to suggest it was unoccupied. Samuel led the horses from the barn, already saddled and loaded with their meager provisions. He helped Robert mount first, ensuring he was secure before turning to assist Olivia. As she prepared to put her foot in the stirrup, she caught sight of his face in the moonlight, resolute, concerned, and something else she couldn't quite name. "Samuel," she said quietly, using his first name for the first time. "Thank you for everything." He held her gaze for a long moment, then surprised her by taking her hand and pressing it briefly to his lips. "Stay close to me," he murmured. "I won't let anything happen to either of you." The intimate gesture sent an unexpected warmth through her, despite their dire circumstances. Olivia mounted Sonny with his help, settling into the saddle with more confidence than she'd had that morning. Samuel led them away from the ranch, keeping to the shadows as they rode into the night. Olivia couldn't help looking back at the darkened house, the place that had been sanctuary, however briefly. What would become of it? Of them? As if reading her thoughts, Samuel spoke softly as he guided them toward a narrow canyon that would shield their escape route. "Sometimes the best path forward means leaving things behind," he said. "I learned that a long time ago. It seems unfair that you should lose your home because of our troubles," she replied. His silhouette against the star-strewn sky was steady, resolute. "Some things are worth more than a house or land, Miss Parker." The way he looked at her as he said it made Olivia wonder exactly what he meant by some things. But there was no time to dwell on it as they pressed deeper into the rugged terrain, the sounds of pursuit growing more distant behind them. The next 3 days tested them all to their limits. Robert's wound, though healing, caused him constant pain as they traveled over rough country. Samuel pushed them to ride from dawn until dusk, stopping only when absolutely necessary, always alert for signs of pursuit. Olivia found muscles she never knew she had, aching from hours in the saddle, yet she never complained. They avoided settlements and main trails, making camp in hidden canyons and dense stands of trees. Each night, Samuel took the first watch, insisting Olivia and Robert rest while he kept vigil. Often, Olivia would wake to find him still awake, staring into the darkness with his revolver close at hand. During these quiet nighttime hours, when Robert slept fitfully nearby, Olivia and Samuel would talk in hushed voices. He told her about his time in the war, his troubled return to Missouri, where a dispute with a former Confederate soldier had led to bloodshed, and his flight west. She shared stories of her life in Boston, her parents' passing that had left her and Robert to fend for themselves, her teaching position at a girls' school. "You'll go back to that life?" he asked on the third night, adding a small branch to their carefully banked fire. "Once this is over?" Olivia considered the question, watching the flames dance. "I don't know. Everything seems different now." "The West changes people," he agreed, "makes them see what they're truly made of." "And what am I made of, Mr. Daniels?" she asked, a hint of teasing in her voice despite their circumstances. His gray eyes reflected the firelight as they met hers across the flames. "Something stronger than steel, Miss Parker. I've known hardened men who'd have broken under what you've endured these past days." The compliment warmed her more than the fire. "I had good reason to be strong." His gaze lingered on her face, and for a moment, Olivia thought he might say more. Instead, he nodded toward where Robert slept. "You should rest. We'll reach the outskirts of Tucson by tomorrow evening if we push hard." As she settled into her bedroll, Olivia found herself watching Samuel's profile against the night sky, wondering what might have happened if they'd met under different circumstances, not as fugitives fleeing danger, but as a man and woman free to explore the connection she felt growing between them. Late the following afternoon, they crested a rise to see Tucson spread below them in the valley, a proper city compared to Dry Gulch, with brick buildings, church steeples, and the unmistakable signs of established civilization. Samuel halted their small party in the shelter of a rocky outcropping. "We'll wait until dusk to enter town," he decided. "Less attention that way." Robert, who had grown progressively weaker during the day's journey, nodded gratefully at the chance to rest. Olivia helped him dismount and settle against a boulder, concern etching her features as she noted his pallor. "His wound's inflamed," she told Samuel quietly. "We need to get him to a doctor." Samuel checked Robert's side, his expression grim as he noted the angry red streaks spreading from beneath the bandage. "Infection's setting in. We can't wait for dark." Quickly, they revised their plan. Samuel would escort Robert directly to the doctor, while Olivia would take the ledgers to the territorial office and ask for the marshal. "It's risky splitting up," Samuel warned. "Whitcomb may have telegraphed ahead to associates in Tucson." "Robert needs medical attention now," Olivia insisted. "And these ledgers need to reach the authorities before anyone can stop us." After a brief argument, Samuel conceded the point. He removed his bandana and used it to secure the oilskin packet of ledgers inside Olivia's bodice, hidden from view. "The territorial office is on Congress Street, a white building with columns," he instructed. "Ask for Marshal Davis by name, no one else." His hands lingered at her waist longer than necessary, his expression intense. "Be careful, Olivia." "If anything happens, it won't," she promised, briefly covering his hands with her own. "I'll meet you at the doctor's office as soon as I've delivered these." Their gazes held, so much unspoken passing between them. Then Samuel turned to help Robert back onto his horse. "God go with you," Robert told her, clasping her hand weakly. Olivia squeezed his fingers. "And with you both." They separated at the edge of town, Samuel and Robert heading toward the doctor's office on the east side, while Olivia rode directly toward the center of Tucson. Despite her exhaustion, she sat tall in the saddle, projecting a confidence she didn't entirely feel as she navigated the busy streets. Tucson was alive with activity wagons rumbling along the dusty thoroughfares, shopkeepers closing up for the evening, cowboys and miners mingling with more respectable citizens. No one paid particular attention to a travel-worn woman riding alone, which suited Olivia perfectly. She located the territorial office without difficulty, tethering Sonny to the hitching post outside the impressive white building. Straightening her disheveled clothing as best she could, she climbed the steps and entered. Inside, several clerks were preparing to leave for the day. One looked up with obvious impatience at the late visitor. "We're closing, madam," he informed her curtly. "I need to see Marshal Davis," Olivia replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "It's urgent. Marshal's gone for the day. Come back tomorrow." "This cannot wait until tomorrow," she insisted, stepping closer to his desk. "It concerns corruption at the Dry Gulch Silver and Mining Company, and there are men in danger because of it. Please." Something in her earnest plea must have reached him, for he hesitated, then sighed. "Wait here." He disappeared into a back office, returning moments later with a tall man whose weathered face and alert eyes marked him as someone who had seen his share of frontier justice. "I'm Davis," he said without preamble. "You have information about Dry Gulch?" "Yes, sir." Olivia glanced meaningfully at the clerk still within earshot. "May we speak privately?" The marshal assessed her briefly, then nodded toward his office. Once inside with the door closed, Olivia withdrew the ledgers from their hiding place and laid them on his desk. "These are the company's real accounting books," she explained. "They prove the owners have been defrauding their investors and the territory of tax revenue. My brother discovered the discrepancy and was shot for his trouble." Davis's eyebrows rose as he examined the documents. "This is serious evidence, Miss Parker, Olivia Parker. My brother is Robert Parker, former clerk for the company. He's currently with a doctor in town. The man who helped us escape, Samuel Daniels, is with him." The marshal's head snapped up at the name. "Sullivan Daniels." "Yes," Olivia confirmed, her heart sinking at his reaction. "Do you know him?" "Know of him," Davis replied carefully. "He has a reputation. Whatever you've heard, he saved my brother's life and helped bring this evidence to you at great personal cost," she said firmly. "Without him, we wouldn't be alive." Davis studied her for a long moment, then returned his attention to the ledgers. "These will need to be verified, but if they're genuine, well, some powerful people are going to face serious charges." "They are genuine," Olivia assured him. "And Harold Whitcomb has already sent men after us. They may have followed us to Tucson." This caught the marshal's full attention. "Where are your brother and Daniels now?" "At the doctor's office. My brother's wound has become infected during our journey." Davis moved swiftly to the door, calling for one of his deputies. After giving rapid instructions, he turned back to Olivia. "I'm sending men to secure the doctor's office and bring your companions here. In the meantime, I need your full statement." For the next hour, Olivia recounted everything from Robert's discovery of the fraud to their escape from Dry Gulch. Davis listened intently, occasionally making notes or asking for clarification. "And Clyde Haggerty?" he asked when she had finished. "You believe Daniels found him dead?" "That's my understanding," she replied carefully. "Samuel never explicitly said so, but the ledgers were in Clyde's possession after he shot my brother, and Samuel later had them." Davis nodded thoughtfully. "Daniels has always operated in gray areas, but he's never been known to kill without cause. If Haggerty was already dead or dying when he found him." He left the implication hanging. A knock at the door interrupted them. The deputy entered, his expression troubled. "Marshal, we've got a situation at the doctor's office. Parker's there, but Daniels isn't. According to the doctor, 4 men showed up looking for them. Daniels led them away from the office to protect Parker." Olivia's blood ran cold. "Whitcomb's men, they must have been right behind us." Davis was already buckling on his gun belt. "Where did they go?" "North side of town, toward the old warehouses." The marshal turned to Olivia. "Stay here. It's safe, and your brother will be brought here as soon as he's stable enough to move." "I'm coming with you," she insisted, rising to her feet. "Miss Parker, this is likely to turn violent. I can't allow a civilian." "Samuel risked everything to help us," she interrupted, her voice steady despite her fear. "I won't abandon him now." Davis assessed her determination, then nodded curtly. "Stay with my deputy. Follow his instructions exactly. If there's gunfire, you take cover and don't move until I say so." "Clear, clear," she agreed, relief flooding through her that she wouldn't be left behind to wonder and wait. They moved quickly through the darkening streets, Davis gathering additional deputies as they made their way toward the northern edge of town. The warehouses loomed against the twilight sky, abandoned structures from when the railroad had initially been planned to run through a different part of town. "They've holed up in there," Davis's scout reported, pointing to the largest building. 4 men went in after Daniels. "Heard shots about 10 minutes ago, then nothing." Olivia's heart contracted painfully at the news. 10 minutes of silence after gunshots could only mean no. She refused to believe Samuel could be gone. Davis deployed his men around the warehouse, then turned to Olivia. "Stay here with Deputy Harris. I mean it." She nodded, though everything in her screamed to run into that building and find Samuel. As the lawmen moved into position, preparing to enter the warehouse from multiple points, Olivia strained to see any movement within the shadowy structure. The next few minutes were a blur of shouted commands, more gunfire, and agonizing uncertainty. Deputy Harris kept her behind a stack of crates across the street, his hand firm on her shoulder when she instinctively tried to move forward at the sound of shots. Finally, Davis emerged from the warehouse, his expression grim as he approached them. "3 of Whitcomb's men are dead," he reported. "The 4th is wounded but alive for questioning." "And Samuel?" Olivia asked, her voice barely a whisper. The marshal's face softened slightly. "He's alive, Miss Parker. Took a bullet to the leg, but he was still fighting when we got to him. Doc's seeing to him now." Relief made her knees weak, and Harris had to steady her. "Can I see him? Soon. Let the doctor do his work first." Davis guided her gently toward a bench. "Your brother's been moved to our office. He's resting comfortably, and the doctor says with proper care he should recover fully." "Thank you," Olivia said, the simple words inadequate for the overwhelming gratitude she felt. "Don't thank me yet," Davis replied. "There's still the matter of the charges against Daniels from Missouri, and questions about Clyde Haggerty's death." Her heart sank. "But the ledgers will certainly help his case," the marshal assured her, "as will your testimony and your brother's." "I'm just saying there's still a legal process to follow." It was another hour before Olivia was permitted to see Samuel. He had been moved to a small room adjacent to the marshal's office, where a deputy stood guard. Inside, Samuel lay on a narrow cot, his left leg bandaged and elevated, his face pale but his eyes clear as they fixed on her when she entered. "Olivia," he said, relief evident in his voice. "You're safe." She moved swiftly to his side, taking his hand between both of hers. "And you nearly weren't. What were you thinking, drawing them away like that?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Couldn't let them find Robert or you." "The marshal has the ledgers," she told him, "and Robert's stable. Everything you fought for is happening." "Good," he murmured, his fingers tightening around hers. "Worth it, then." Something in his tone made her look more closely at his face. "Samuel, what aren't you telling me?" he sighed, turning his head to look at the ceiling. "Davis recognized me. There are still those wanted notices from Missouri, and questions about Haggerty. We'll clear your name," she promised fiercely. "Robert and I will testify to everything you did to help us." Samuel's gaze returned to her face, studying it with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Why would you do that? You barely know me." "I know enough," she replied softly. "I know you risked your life for 2 strangers, left your home, fought impossible odds. Those aren't the actions of a man who deserves to be in trouble with the law." He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of her hand. "And after, when this is over, what then, Olivia Parker?" The question hung between them, laden with meaning. What indeed? Return to Boston and her teaching position, stay in the West? And where did this man, this complicated, honorable, dangerous man, fit into either of those possibilities? "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'd like the chance to find out. Wouldn't you?" The smile that spread across his face then was like sunrise breaking over the desert, transformative, full of possibility. "Yes," he said simply. "I would." Marshal Davis cleared his throat from the doorway, reminding them they weren't alone. "Miss Parker, your brother's asking for you. And Sullivan, I need your formal statement now that the doctor says you're clear-headed." Reluctantly, Olivia released Samuel's hand and rose. "I'll come back," she promised. "I'll be here," he replied. "Not going anywhere fast with this leg." The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of legal proceedings, medical treatments, and gradual healing. The territorial governor himself became involved once the extent of the mining company's fraud was revealed. Harold Whitcomb and several of his associates were arrested in Dry Gulch and brought to Tucson to face charges of fraud, attempted murder, and corruption. Robert improved steadily under proper medical care, regaining his strength and providing detailed testimony about the accounting discrepancies he had discovered. The surviving member of Whitcomb's gang confessed that Clyde Haggerty had indeed been wounded in the exchange with Robert, and had likely died from his injuries before Samuel ever found him. As for the charges from Missouri, Marshal Davis sent telegrams to clarify the circumstances and discovered that the matter had been officially closed years earlier, when witnesses came forward to confirm Samuel had acted in self-defense. The wanted notices had simply never been recalled from the more distant territories. Through it all, Olivia found herself drawn more deeply into Samuel's orbit. She split her time between caring for Robert and visiting Samuel as he recovered from his wound. Their conversations ranged from light-hearted to profound, building a foundation of understanding and respect that gradually blossomed into something neither could deny was more than friendship. On a clear autumn evening, with Samuel finally able to walk with the aid of a cane, and Robert declared fully recovered by the doctor, the three of them sat on the porch of the small house they had rented during their extended stay in Tucson. "I received a wire today," Robert announced. "The mining company's legitimate investors have appointed me to oversee the reorganization of the operation, with a substantial increase in salary." "That's wonderful news," Olivia said warmly. "Will you accept?" Robert nodded. "I think so. It's good work, and a chance to ensure things are done properly this time." He glanced at Samuel. "They've asked me to recommend someone to handle security for the mine and payroll, someone trustworthy." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering me a job, Parker?" "Considering it." "You'd have to rebuild your ranch, of course. Marshal Davis received word that Whitcomb's remaining men set fire to it after we escaped." Regret colored his tone. "I'm sorry, Sullivan." A shadow crossed Samuel's face, but he shrugged. "Expected as much. Land's still mine, though. Could rebuild with steady work." "And what about you, Livy?" Robert asked. "Will you go back to Boston now that this is settled?" Olivia felt Samuel's gaze on her, though he remained silent, waiting for her answer. The question she had been pondering for weeks now demanded resolution. "I've been offered a position at the new school they are establishing here," she replied, watching Samuel from the corner of her eye. "They need experienced teachers." "And will you accept?" Samuel asked, his voice carefully neutral despite the intensity in his eyes. Olivia turned to face him fully. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether there might be a reason for me to stay in Arizona territory, a compelling reason." Understanding dawned in his expression, followed by something that looked remarkably like hope. Robert, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, made a show of checking his pocket watch. "Would you look at the time? I promised Dr. Winters I'd stop by this evening to discuss my final checkup." He stood, wincing only slightly at the movement. "Don't wait up, Livy." With a meaningful glance between them, he departed, leaving Olivia and Samuel alone on the porch as the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Your brother isn't exactly subtle," Samuel commented, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "No, he isn't," Olivia agreed, moving to sit beside Samuel on the porch swing. "But he means well." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue above. "A compelling reason," Samuel finally said, turning toward her. "Is that what you need, Olivia Parker?" She met his gaze steadily. I need honesty, Samuel, about what you want, about what might be possible between us. He considered this, his expression thoughtful. When I first saw you in that saloon, cornered by those drunks, all I wanted was to get you safely away. I didn't expect. He paused, searching for the right words. I didn't expect to find myself caring whether you stayed or went. And now I care very much. His hand found hers, warm and solid. I'm not a perfect man, Olivia. I've done things I'm not proud of, lived a harder life than someone like you deserves to be part of. I believe I've demonstrated I'm stronger than I look, she reminded him, squeezing his fingers. And I've never been interested in perfect men, just honest ones. A smile spread slowly across his face, transforming his rugged features. Then, honestly, I'd like you to stay, not just in Arizona, but with me, however that might look. Olivia's heart swelled with emotion. Are you asking to court me, Samuel Daniels? I believe I am, he replied, bringing her hand to his lips in an echo of that moment before they fled his ranch. Though I should warn you, I'm better with actions than words. Then show me, she whispered. He did, drawing her closer and kissing her with a tenderness that belied his strength. Olivia melted into him, all the tension and uncertainty of the past weeks dissolving in the certainty of this connection. When they finally parted, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. I should probably speak to your brother, he murmured. Ask his blessing properly. Olivia laughed softly. I think his hasty departure was blessing enough, but yes, he'd appreciate the gesture. As twilight deepened around them, they remained on the porch swing, talking of possibilities: a rebuilt ranch, a teaching position close enough to ride to daily, a future neither had imagined when he first said those fateful words in the Dry Gulch saloon. That's enough. She's leaving with me. 1 year later, the newly rebuilt Daniels Ranch house gleamed in the spring sunshine. Its fresh pine boards and sturdy stone chimney, a testament to community effort and determined vision. Flowers planted by Olivia's hand brightened the front yard, and the corral held twice as many horses as before, including several fine breeding mares that formed the foundation of Samuel's growing reputation as a horse trainer. Inside, the house hummed with activity as final preparations were made for the most significant day in its short history. In the bedroom that had once been Samuel's alone, Olivia stood before a looking glass while her sister-in-law, Mary Roberts' new bride of 3 months, adjusted the simple wreath of wildflowers in her hair. You look beautiful, Mary declared, stepping back to admire the effect. Samuel won't know what hit him. Olivia smoothed the skirt of her cream-colored dress, a flutter of nerves and excitement mingling in her stomach. Is Robert keeping him occupied? Last I saw, they were inspecting that new stallion Samuel bought last week, Mary replied with a laugh. Men and their horses a perfect distraction on wedding day. A knock at the door heralded Mrs. Fletcher, who had traveled from Dry Gulch for the occasion. The ministers arrived, and the guests are all seated outside, she announced. It's time, my dear. Taking a deep breath, Olivia followed the older woman through the house and onto the back porch, where a path had been created between rows of chairs set up in the garden. At the end, beneath an arch twined with desert wildflowers, stood Samuel, tall and handsome in a new dark suit, his hair neatly trimmed and his face cleanly shaven for the occasion. Beside him, Robert beamed with pride as he prepared to give his sister away. The small gathering of friends and neighbors, including Marshall Davis and his wife, the doctor who had treated both Robert and Samuel, and various ranchers and townspeople who had helped rebuild the Daniels Ranch, turned to watch as Olivia began her walk toward her future. With each step, memories of the past year flickered through her mind: Samuel's patient courtship, their work side by side to rebuild his home, Her success, establishing a small school that served the children of nearby ranches. There had been challenges, of course nightmares that occasionally haunted them both, moments of doubt about whether they could truly bridge their different backgrounds, the long hours of Samuel's work with the mining company while maintaining his ranch. But through it all, what had begun in danger and desperation had blossomed into something neither could have anticipated when they first met in that saloon, a partnership of equals, founded on respect and deepened by love. As she reached Samuel's side and placed her hand in his, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she had found her place in this wild territory not because it was easy or safe, but because it was where she was meant to be, with the man she was meant to find. "Ready?" he whispered, his gray eyes warm with emotion. "For everything," she replied, and together they turned to face the minister and the promise of all the days to come. In the years that followed, the story of how Samuel Sullivan Daniels had stepped between Olivia Parker and danger at the Dry Gulch Saloon became something of a local legend, embellished with each telling, but never losing the essential truth at its heart. How a moment of courage had changed two lives forever. How sometimes the most unexpected beginnings led to the most beautiful endings. And how in the untamed Arizona territory of 1878, two people from vastly different worlds had found in each other exactly what they needed most: not just safety or security, but the rare and precious chance to build a life of shared purpose and enduring love.